Yeah. Well, how did you get into baseball?
Well, I hit the frozen ground too many times without a helmet. You know that.
Yeah. No, but I mean, it's one thing to be a college athlete, Ron, and it's quite another thing to go from college athletics and 2 years in professional football to the abuse, to the terrible travel, to all the things that go with being a professional umpire. How did you make that choice?
Stupidity. Absolutely. Nobody ever said umpires were smart. No, they told me I was going to play with a ball again, and it didn't have points on it. And I said, oh, good, maybe I won't be hurt all the time. I didn't really get into umpiring. I was going, at the time, Spike Briggs was the co-owner of the Lions and the Tigers. And I called him up after I quit football, and I said, hey, I want to get it back into sports. And I said, how about hiring me as a coach? He said, Ronnie, you were a lousy football player. Why would I hire you as a lousy coach? He said, I have nothing open in football. How about going with my baseball team? And I said, well, I could never hit the curveball. He said, not a player, dum-dum. He said, I want you to be a general manager down in Lakeland, and you'll be a liaison man between the ball club and the town of Lakeland, Florida.
Mm-hmm.
I said, super. It'd be nice. I'll be a human being again instead of putting on a super pads and...
Wait a minute, we're not all that bad. Now, I played for 10 years. Now, don't make me look bad.
Oh, hey, why do you think you're talking on a talk show now instead of out working like other human beings?
Oh, don't let him find out about that now, Ron.
Okay, all right. Well, anyway, he said, come on down and do that. So I went down to Florida a little early, and I was supposed to be hired the end of February, and I went down in January. I was teaching school at the time, and I retired from school in January when the semester was over. Went down there, and they said, hey, there's a baseball school going on. And I said, good, let me learn about a round ball instead of a pointed one. And it was an umpire school. And I went there, and I said, oh, my gosh, I can be back on the field again. And I don't have to go through those two-a-day practices that absolutely hurt all over your body.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to care about winning or losing.
Mm-hmm.
I can be an umpire. And I called up Spike Briggs, and I said, hey, I'm going to be an umpire. And he said, what's that? I should have known then. Here's an owner of a club that doesn't know what an umpire is. Well, and anyway, that's how I got into it. I fell into it.
Yeah. How many years did you travel around minor league circuits at AAA or AA or Legion
ball? I was 4 years in the minors. I spent a year in 8-ball, a year in AA, 2 years in AAA, and then I came up with expansion in '69. And I was an expansion baby.
An expansion baby. There's nothing wrong with that because so was I.
Oh, I know.
Where did you pick up? Where did you pick up the flair, Ron? Where does that come from? Your Italian background?
It's not really a flair. What happens is, I get excited over raindrops coming down the window. I get excited over baseball. Baseball to me is a terrific sport, and I hope those umpires don't goof up tonight and make Cincinnati lose because I want to see that winning streak extended. I think it's going to be super if they can win for the next 20 or 30 and set a new record. But,
well, listen, we're talking 162 here, Ron. What are you talking about, 20 or 30?
But that's the one thing, the transition from football to baseball. I couldn't understand that losing in baseball is a way of life. Can you imagine last year, Earl Weaver's Baltimore Orioles won 102 ball games, but they lost 60. Can you imagine playing a football season or 2 seasons and lose 60 ball games?
No. Well, I can't imagine playing 60 ball games.
Yeah,
But Ron, in all honesty, when I would imagine, and I have nothing to back this up with, I would imagine that when you started out umpiring in minor league baseball, that they wanted all umpires to be pretty much the same stereotype. Stand out there in the uniform and make the decisions, and don't draw attention to yourself. Be as inconspicuous as possible.
Right. And I did this for the first couple of years, probably the first 3 years in the minor leagues. And then I said, you know what? I'm not watching the ball game. I'm worried so much about being so perfect robot that I'm not enjoying myself. I said, the heck with this. I'm going to watch the ball game. And if there's, a ground ball to Belanger at short in Baltimore, and he makes a backhand and throws the ball over to first base, and it's a double scoop by the first baseman, and he just snips that guy, I can jump up and down in the air and say, my gosh, what a great play. That's a super play, and you're out, and whoa, that's Major League ball.
Yeah.
And, I said, I'm enjoying myself more. I'm part of the ball game. And then all the trouble started, because then the league presidents came down and said, you're not a robot, and you're supposed to be. Umpires aren't supposed to do that. And I talked to the ball players on the field, and they said, you can't do that. And I said, why not? You know, some of them are nice people. Not all of them, but some of them are nice. I want to know some of them.
When you mention nice people, tell me about Earl Weaver, Ron.
You know, I said some of them are nice people. What happened with Earl? I met Earl in my second year in baseball in Reading, Pennsylvania, in the Eastern League, a Double-A league. And the first time I met him, I walked on the field, and he said, hi, I'm Earl Weaver. And I said, hello, you're very short. I'm Ron Luciano. And he said, do you know who I am? And I said, I think you're the manager of this club, but no, I haven't read your background. Why, do you know who I am? And he said no. And in the third inning of that ball game, I threw him out. I ejected him from the ball game. I said, you can't play anymore. I don't like the way you say things to me. The next night, we came back out in Reading, Pennsylvania, and he lasted till the seventh inning. The third night, he lasted till the second inning. And the fourth night in Reading, Pennsylvania, he came to home plate, and he said, are you going to be as atrocious you have been the other 3 nights? And I said, you're never going to know because I'm throwing you out of the ball game before. And I threw him out 4 nights in a row, and our relationship has been going downhill ever since.
Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, the American League really tries to keep you and Earl Weaver apart, correct?
Oh, hey, I've been fined so many times. You know, that's another thing. I was in baseball so long that fining was a way of life, and suspension, possible suspension, possible firing. I'm 42 years old, and I'm in a vocation where I'm not supposed to be fined. That's for kids. It's a bunch of grown-ups playing a kid's game, but they're fining me. Now I've come to NBC, and NBC said, well, we don't fine, we don't suspend. That's for children. I'm saying, oh my gosh, at 42, I'm finally grown up. I'm out of there. They hated me, and they kept me away from Earl. Last year, I saw Earl Weaver 3 times. We were in Chicago. The first 2 days were rained out. The third day, in the second inning, I ejected him from the ball game, and he was suspended for 3 days. So
that was the incident where he questioned
yes, he came up.
Your mental capacity.
He came up. Oh no, he's always said that. He said, you're ready for the boo-boo farm. He said, you're mentally ill, Ron.
Yeah.
Trouble with you.
Why did they suspend him?
Yeah, no, that's not why he was suspended. He came up and he said, Ronnie, he said, I want this game played under protest. And I said, okay, why now? What's the good rule now you're going to come up with? He said, umpire's integrity. And I said, what you're saying is rather demeaning, and you're saying that I cheat. He said, no, I'm not saying that. I'm saying you're honest, and I'm saying that I'm questioning your integrity, and I want that announced over the loudspeaker. And I said, just that way? And he said, just that way. And I said, you got it, Earl. You also got 3-day suspension out of it, too.
You gave him the suspension,
No,
that comes from the league?
No, if they had to do it all over again, they'd never suspend a ball player or manager on an umpire's.
From the way you're talking, it appears to me, and just what you're saying and the way you're saying it, Ron, you were just looking for an opportunity to get out of umpiring.
Yeah, and when I did call Lee McPhail and tell him that I'm retired from the American League and I'll no longer be an umpire, I heard the champagne cork bottles going off. I heard the disco music going on. The secretary started dancing.
No, you don't really mean that.
They're more elated than I am.
You don't. Now, wait a minute. Now, you don't really mean that because even with your flair, even with your flamboyant approach to baseball, and there's nothing wrong with it, you did a good job. I don't think anybody really complained about the job that you did.
Oh, yeah. Constantly.
Other than Earl Weaver.
No. Hey, constantly. Umpires are always thought of in a negative tone. If I'm in Anaheim and I'm there for 4 days, and the first 3 days I do everything right, that's fine. But they don't call the office and say, you know what, Luciano just did great for 3 days. On the 4th day, if I call a play at second base and they end up losing because of that call, they call up and they say, hey, that Luciano did it again. He lost another game. Then I go into Seattle, and the ball players say, hey, it's too cold in here. We want the temperature turned up. That's part of our job. So I go up and say, hey, your King Dome is beautiful, but turn the heat up. They call up and say, hey, Luciano's making us spend $6,000 a minute more with the price of oil. He's turning the heat up in here. And that's part of my job. But it's always the negative part of Seattle calling Lee McPhail or the American League office, or Anaheim, or Cleveland, or Detroit. They're always saying, that darn Luciano did this wrong, did that wrong. So I'm always looked on in a bad light.
Mm-hmm. How did you last for 11 years then?
I told you, stupidity.
Or just the love of the game. I can't believe it's stupidity.
That's the whole thing. Because I wanted to stay in sports. I really did, at any cost, doing anything. And actually, I'm telling you, the bad parts about it. There were a great many good parts. Between the lines, as the ball players refer to and the umpires, it was just an absolute ball. While I'm on the field, that elation, it's got to be like taking drugs. I haven't, but it's got to be the same type of feeling because it's so high. You're on a high for 2.5 hours.
Yeah, it's like a winning locker room after a big game, too.
Oh, it's so good. The feeling is so great. I'm so up. And then when I came off, and then I get the phone calls, and you're fined for doing this, and for conduct unbecoming American League umpire, you're suspended, and all this other nonsense was going on. But that's the bad part about it. There's a lot of good parts about it. But I went as high as I could go. I did a World Series. I did a playoffs. I've done All-Star games. And now I'm a Major League umpire. I can't go any higher. Like Schmidt with Philadelphia can hit more home runs this year than he ever has before. But an umpire, the only thing I can do is blow more plays. I can miss more this year than I did last year. It can get worse. I can't get any better because if you're good, the next time, if you're perfect, the next time they want you to be better.
Yeah, that's true.
You can't get any better, so I'm ready for a change.
Yeah. Ron Luciano, our guest on Sports Talk. We got to take a break. Ron, stay on the phone. We'll be right back to you. Sports Talk here on Radio 7 WLW, coming up at 7:05 tonight. Cincinnati Reds versus the Atlanta Braves in Atlanta with Marty Brenneman and Joe Nuxall. The Reds try to extend their streak to 8 games. Megastar Frank Pastore going for his second shutout and extending his streak of 25 scoreless innings against Phil Niekro, still trying for the third time so far this season to beat the Reds. Our guest, Ron Luciano, who was an American League umpire for 11 years and just signed a contract with NBC to announce baseball games. Ron, I am from Springfield, Illinois. I grew up with Al Barlick's 2 daughters. And I can tell you that I lived there from the time I was a sophomore in high school until, my parents still live there. I have never seen Al Barlick. The point I'm trying to make is the travel schedule of you umpires is like an escaped convict. It is no fun, right?
Well, they keep trying to hit and misses. They don't want us to stay too long in one town. We might get shot at it. A typical 2-week span for myself would be 3 days in Anaheim, California, over to Dallas for 4 days, up to Seattle, Washington for 3, over to Cleveland for 4 days, to New York for 3, out to Chicago for 1, then a day off to travel to Dallas, Texas. And then from Dallas over to Baltimore for 4, back up to Boston for 2, and then all the way out. We could never figure this out, from Boston to Oakland, California. We always said there had to be one team between Boston and Oakland we could stop at.
Yeah. And you're single, correct?
Yeah, I was married. We have a 72, we had. I keep saying we in the present tense, and I'm not an umpire anymore. We had a 72% divorce rate among umpires. It's a difficult job to travel that much.
You're joking, a 72% divorce rate?
Right.
That's unfortunate. Do you have any offspring? Are there any?
No. That was 2 of the luckiest things that ever happened to me were baseball, of course, my divorce, and my no children.
That's 3.
Yeah. Well, umpires can't count either.
Ron, that's a great line. That is a great line. You're a man to admit it, sir. Your debut supposedly with NBC was going to be last weekend, Texas versus the Yankees, and it was rained out. I imagine that you were tied in knots prior to that baseball game, were you not?
Terrible, because what happened was for 15 years I did rain dances. I learned rain dances from the Indians because as an umpire, you're paid regardless of whether you work or not. And if you're not working, you get the night off, and you probably won't pick up that game on the schedule because in all probability they won't play it the next night, but they'll play it the next time in town, and you won't be there the next time they're in town.
I see.
All you do is lose a game and give it to someone else. So for 15 years I've been praying for rain, and when I went to Texas and saw that rain, I just couldn't believe it. I said, no, why rain on my parade today? Not today.
Yeah, you've been wanting it for 15 years, and the first day you don't want it, you get it.
I get it. Terrible. I went down to the umpire's dressing room, and I told him, I said, now listen, don't you guys goof this up. And I said, what do you mean? I said, we got rain out there today, and I want to play. And they picked me up. And that's it's like picking you up. They picked me up and literally threw me out of the dressing room. I hadn't been on the air yet, and I got thrown out of the umpire's dressing room.
The first time that you talked to your fellow umpires, Ron, what was their reaction to you signing with NBC?
They're elated. They really are, because they figured naturally it's a move up. And they said, hey, we finally broke through, because most of the people believe that umpires were born in Transylvania without mothers and fathers, that little kids hate us and dogs bite us. And they said, hey, you're going to be on the air, and people are going to say, you know what, he's almost human. Not quite, but almost. And it might be a new light for us. And everybody's happy. They really are.
Good. I'm glad to hear it. It's, I suppose, an opportunity for some other umpires to make the big step to a major network to announce baseball games.
Right. Opening a door for them.
I happened to be watching the baseball game on, was it Saturday or Sunday? It was Saturday.
Right.
And they broke away to you, you and Merle Harmon, and you were talking about Gaylord Perry and his spitball. And you said that everybody in baseball knows that Gaylord Perry threw the spitball.
Well, he wrote a book about it, and he admitted it.
Well, if that's true, why didn't you ever catch him doing it?
Well, first of all, that's what he said. I never caught you doing it. But see, what happens is that, we're told what to do by our echelon. Our bosses tell us what to do. And what they've done in the past is said, listen, if you see Gaylord Perry throwing that spitball, you call it. But now remember, how do you tell a spitball? And I say,
it drops. It drops.
Right. It pops. It drops in. It's a different spin on the thing. He said, in other words, you see it with your eyes. I said, yes. And he said, now, what are umpires' eyes? I said, everybody knows we're blind. He said, well, now, make sure it's a spitball. I said, well, how can we make sure? We can only tell by our vision. And, well, you're going to have to make sure. Now, I don't want people to make any mistakes. Your vision has to be absolutely perfect, and you have to be absolutely sure that man throws it. And remember, you have to find out where he throws it from.
That's right, where he gets the foreign substance.
And so they never told us don't call it, but they put such a burden on us. We had a guy by the name of Dave Phillips that called it on Gaylord Perry when he was pitching with Cleveland. And we talked to Dave afterwards, and he says the worst 2 weeks he's ever spent in his life. Because he had people coming in, and he said, how could you tell I was a spitball? And he said, I saw it was. We know you're blind. What do you mean you saw it was? And that's what our bosses were telling us. You should have heard the rest of the people.
Are you telling me that they really don't back you up in a lot of these situations? That more times than...
I was never backed up as an umpire.
Most times, 9 times out of 10, they will go with the manager or the general manager or somebody who makes a call against the umpire.
Yes, and you can't blame them. That's the way life is, and that's the way baseball is. I told you, we're always talked about in a negative vein. And listen, let's face it. If Pete Rose, well, I shouldn't say Pete Rose because he's a traitor to Cincinnati anyway.
Well, he's the sacred cow in Cincinnati. No matter.
Yes? Okay.
Sure, still.
All right. Now, if Pete Rose comes up and I throw him out of the ball game for abusive language. Now, do you want to take Ron Luciano's side against Pete Rose, or do you want Pete Rose to have the right thing to do because he had the right to yell at me because I did the wrong thing? It's just natural to go towards the ball players and the managers. Earl Weaver was thrown out, I don't know the number, I'll take a guess, let's say 15 times last year. And I don't think he was, I'm going to guess, but he wasn't fined more than twice. So what they're telling Earl Weaver is 15 times you were thrown out, twice you were wrong, 13 times the umpire was wrong.
Did you get fined? How many of those times were...
Just once.
Once.
I only saw him 3 times last year. Twice we were rained out. The third time I got him.
You got him. But that's the only time that you saw him.
That's the only time I saw the man at home or on the road. I wasn't in Baltimore. Little do they know that Baltimore's not my favorite city, but that's another story. So they're actually doing me a favor by keeping me out of Baltimore last year.
I can understand that. Let me ask you another question. Even though you umpire in the American League, there is a great deal of talk about Don Sutton doing something to the baseball with a foreign substance.
All right.
How does he do it?
Look what happened a couple of years ago when Doug Harvey, who's probably the best umpire in the National League. The man is fantastic. He's right more times than God could be if God put on a uniform and came down there as an umpire. The man is unbelievable.
Wait a minute.
Oh,
No. He wouldn't make that mistake. He would not make that mistake, so you can't even tell me.
Anyway, he's there, and finally, umpires are not the smartest people in the world. But every time Sutton pitches, you see a little cut on the same part of the ball. Now, we go into the office, and they say, well, maybe it was caused by the bats. And you say, well, listen, J.D. Richards pitches, and the cut is not there.
J.R. Richards, you mean?
J.R. Richards. And the Sutton pitches, and the cut is there. Now, you tell me that every time Sutton pitches, it's there, and every time another pitcher pitches, it's not there. You know, even as dumb as the umpires are, we got to figure that Sutton's got to be doing it. And it just follows naturally. It's logical. So what happened was Doug Harvey finally said, that's it. He found 6 balls in one ball game that were all cut in the same place. And he took 4 of them, not 6 of them, and sent them into the office and said, here they are, and the rule book states unequivocally, the man shall be fined and suspended for what he did. This is what the baseball rules say.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Sutton was not fined or not suspended. So in other words, they said, even though the umpires think you did it, don't.
And Mr. Harvey, if I'm not mistaken, caught an awful lot of flack because of that.
Mr. Harvey, if you ask him today if he will ever do it again, he would tell you no.
Now, that doesn't make sense. I mean, that doesn't help baseball to allow people to do funny things to the baseball.
Oh, wait a minute. No, wait a minute. How many people in baseball do funny things?
To the baseball?
Yeah, only a few, because it is so difficult. It is so hard. A spitball to throw is probably the hardest pitch in the world to throw. I remember Steve Hamilton used to throw it way back, or Jack Hamilton, and Gaylord, and maybe a couple others. It's very hard to control. And if you can't control it, what happens is they hit home runs off of you. So you can throw 5 spitters, and they'll hit 4 home runs. What's the good of throwing it? You're not going to throw it because it's so hard to control. Okay? It takes a very great velocity on the ball to throw it. You have to be able to throw the heck out of the ball. It can't just be a lob. It's got to really be a good fastball, and that takes a tremendous amount of pressure on the arm.
I got you.
So just a few pitchers can throw it.
I got you.
That's why everyone doesn't throw it in the league. And since only a few can throw it, it's not really an overwhelming problem. And since we don't want controversy, and baseball is so conservative and so traditional, that they don't want trouble. And that's why they're so happy because Luciano's out, because I was not conservative and not traditional, and I did things that just drove them up a wall.
Yeah. Ron Luciano, our guest. Hang on, Ron. We'll be right back to you.
Okay, Bob.
Sports Talk on Radio 7. Ron Luciano, our guest. Ron, did I read that you're a bird watcher?
Oh, here we go again. See, what happened was that we had a man by the name of Frank Umont, another ex-football player, used to play in the times when they didn't wear helmets.
Well, that accounts for it.
And Frank came in. See, I was out bird watching one morning, and I've been bird watching for 30 years, but I never told anybody. All right? And I was out one morning at 5 o'clock. I came back, took my stuff off, went to bed. Now it's 12 noon, and he came in the room, and he walked in, and he said, oh, my gosh, you're a peeping Tom. I said, what do you mean? He said, you got binoculars here, and what's this book say? Red-headed, pileated woodpecker. And I said, Ian, what room is she in? And I figured right then and there, either I've got to tell the world that I watch birds, or I'm going to be known as the peeping Tom of the umpire profession, right? And so it took me 2 weeks to finally tell him, explain to him. We'd go to the zoo, and he'd say, what's this? And I said, I don't know. It's a Latin name. I'm telling you the English name. I don't know the Latin. Anyway, he finally talked him into it. And he did a one-man campaign to tell everybody in the universe that I watch birds. We'd walk on an airplane. He'd open the cockpit door and say, I got a 300-pound kid out here to watch his birds. It was just unreal, and everybody picked it up.
But it is your hobby. You do enjoy watching birds. You're an ornithologist, right?
Well, I can't spell ornithologist, but that's what I do. I can spell bird and I can spell watcher, but ornithologist is a little bit out of my line.
Wait a minute, Ron, hang on. We got some people here on the phone that want to talk to you. 749-3420 is the local number. Ron Luciano, our guest, and these people have been waiting for 50 minutes now, Ron. I want them to get on.
Good, Bob.
Okay, hang on. Thank you for waiting. You're on Sports Talk with Ron Luciano. Go ahead.
Bob, I didn't want to talk to him. I wanted to go back to last night on this White Sox scandal.
Hey, listen.
I didn't know Luciano was going to be on tonight.
I'm sorry, but we've got conversation with Ron Luciano, and I want to keep it there. Okay?
Hey, one thing, Nick. He made one statement that's wrong. You can tell him.
Tell him yourself. He's sitting there.
Are you there, Ron?
Sure, I'm listening.
Okay. If Pete Rose is a traitor, then Philip Nolan should be president of the United States.
I agree.
Who is Philip Nolan?
He meant Nolan Ryan.
Nolan Ryan.
Right.
Are you still there, caller?
I agree. I don't think people should trade teams, though. I really don't. I think Pete Rose should be in Cincinnati and not for Philadelphia.
I agree with you totally. I think that guy hung up. He was trying to blacken your eye, Ron. I thought it was a great response. I got a question for you.
Sure.
What do you think about well, now that you're out of baseball, let me ask you. I don't know if you don't have to answer this.
Okay.
How much did you make umpiring in baseball?
I was tops last year. When I first started, starting salary was $10,000 a year. Okay? And I worked after 2 walkouts, 2 strikes. I worked up to one of the highest paid umpires ever, and I made $43,000 this year. I would have made.
All right. Now, it brings a question to mind that if you're out there making $43,000 a year and you're one of the top paid umpires there is in the game,
right,
and you're calling balls and strikes with a pitcher who's making $1 million a year, are you looking for more out of that pitcher?
You know, I let personalities get into it. You know, I never thought about Nolan Ryan. You know, each pitch, was worth maybe $2,000 a pitch. What I looked at was, he just throws the heck out of the ball, and it was all relative. Gasoline's not worth $1.50 a gallon, and Nolan Ryan may not be worth $2,000 a pitch, but my job was to call it, and I was awed by the way he could throw the heck out of the ball anyway.
Yeah.
Just like I'm awed out of Pete Rose. Nobody can hit the ball that consistently.
Yeah.
It's unreal. So whatever they pay him, I think it's relative. Gas is not worth $1.50. Maybe Pete Rose isn't worth $4 million.
Yeah.
But if they're going to pay him $4 million, he's worth it.
But it doesn't bother you. You don't.
I figured it out one day. For me and Jim Rice, when he signed for $7 million in Boston, for him to strike out, it would pay him for that one pitch to strike out about $164. And for me to call him out on that strike, they paid me 27 cents. I figured about $1.50 and him down to about 145, and we would have been even.
Not bad. Hang on a minute. We got a call for you. Thank you for waiting. You're on Sports Talk with Ron Luciano.
Ron?
Yeah.
Could you tell me how many people you've thrown out? At least one person in every ball game for how many games?
Okay, I was one of the lowest ever. I'm too easygoing. That's one of the things that my fellow umpires told me. Last year was a high year for me. I threw out 4 in 100, and we missed a few, so about 130-some ball games. The year before, I worked 162 ball games, and I threw out 1 person.
And last year, one of the people that you threw out was the guy that you always threw out, Earl Weaver. So he really doesn't count.
And another person no, that's not it. The one person the year before was Earl Weaver, too.
Ah.
And the year before that, I threw out Earl, I think, once or twice, and I threw out one other person one time. Last year, I threw out Sparky Anderson, I'm sorry to tell you, but it wasn't for anything he said to me. I was protecting another fellow umpire. It was a young kid that was up, and he said something about him. And, you can't let, me being an older veteran, I can't let the managers or ball players pick on the younger kids. I would rather them put me take the flack and let the young kids develop.
Yeah, well, I would love to see you and Sparky Anderson go at it. Spark at about 5'10", and about 175 pounds, and you at least 6'4", and at one time probably weighed 240. You are well past 240 now. That had to be
closer to 300.
Are you really 300 pounds?
300 pounds now, and I can really say it because for years they used to fine me for so many pounds overweight, and I'd go in and I'd say, "What do you weigh?" And they said, I told them 257. And they said, 257, you're 7 pounds overweight. I said, yes, I know. I'll get it down. And I've been weighing 300 for 10 years. I can finally go and tell them.
It's listed in the American League book here, the red book. I just looked at it, the official American League book. Ron Luciano, 6'4", 240.
I told them 254. They even lied about that. Oh, my gosh, that's funny.
Thanks for your phone call.
Yeah.
Bye-bye. And thank you for waiting. You're on WLW Sports Talk with Ron Luciano.
Hello there.
Hi.
Hey, Bob, listen, I want to ask him a question, but in a hurry. I want to tell you that I loved those 70-yard pass plays from Kenny Anderson in the early 70s to you.
So did I. Now your question.
Everybody did.
I loved hearing Ed Roush last night.
Oh, yeah, Ron, you recognize the name of Eddie Roush?
Oh, of course.
Used to play with the Cincinnati Reds. We were talking about the Black Sox scandal back in 1919, and his granddaughter called, and he is still living. He's 87 years old, and he lives in Oakland City, Indiana. And we called him last night and questioned him about the 1919 Black Sox scandal. It was terrific. It was one of the best things we've ever done in this program.
Gosh, that would have been terrific. How old is he now?
87.
Woo.
I think he'll be. He's got a birthday coming up too. May 8th, he'll be 88. Go ahead with your question, caller.
Okay, I just wanted to tell you I really liked hearing him. I wanted to know from Ron there if there is such a big difference in the strike zones in both, National League to American League, and also whether he thought the National League was better than the American League, like so many people are saying.
Okay, let's take the first one. The National League is better because they get better backing. The National League are better at calling balks. And the reason they're better at calling balks is they have a rule in the National League that says if you call a balk because of the stepping of the foot in the direction of the first base, and they call it, you can't come out and argue about it. All right? Now, if I'm an umpire in the National League and I call a balk and the manager starts to come out and I eject him from the ball game because he can't even talk to me about the balk, I'm going to call the balks because I'm going to be real good and real close on it. In the American League, if I call a balk, they can come out and argue for 15 minutes. And I'm not going to go through all that nonsense. I don't want 15 minutes of argument from them. So I'm going to make so darn sure that that balk is obvious to everyone in the world, even our league president, so that I can't get any flack from anybody. They get better backing, so therefore I think the National League does a little better job all the way around umpiring.
I certainly hope Mr. McPhail is not listening to this program.
Oh, let him listen. I've told him this for years. I've sat in there and argued with them for years. This is nothing new. That's why they're happy to get rid of me, because I am a maverick, and I've told them I wanted to sit down with Earl Weaver and the rest of the managers for years and years and years and said, listen, put the umpires and the managers together because we're going to get along better, we're going to know each other's people, and we'll umpire better, and they'll manage, and they'll leave us alone.
Yeah. Ron, listen, I got to interrupt. We are almost out of time. Thanks for your call, caller. I'm sorry, we're out of time. Reds baseball is next.
Okay, good luck, Reds, anyway.
Yeah, thank you very much. Ron, best of luck in your new career.
Thanks, Bob, and go Reds.
I think you have the personality, and I think you have the flair for it, and you're working with the best baseball director in the country, and Ken Fouts this weekend. He told me to tell you that this afternoon. Nice talking to you. Thank you, and good luck.
Okay, let's do it again, Bob.
All right, bye-bye. Ron Luciano, the flamboyant 300-pound American League umpire, who is now a commentator.